Go man go, I got a gal that I love so I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready, ready, ready to rock and roll on the flat top cat.
I believe everybody should carry a gun, and if I were in charge of this nation, I'd put you in jail if you didn't carry a gun. That's what I've got to say about the Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment was an outgrowth of Old English law, and essentially the purpose was to authorize, if you will, the creation of militias, which were small. We would probably try to equate it with an army. We had no standing army in those days. So this was to provide for the creation of militias, which were volunteers of all the farmers and the merchants and other citizens of the young states, who would come together as a kind of armed force to defend the country. And when there were not moments of defending the country, you were at least expected to have a gun to be able to defend your family.
The Second Amendment, what does it say and what does it mean? Well, it mentions a militia, and during the times when it was actually evolved and created, the militia was a very local security organization, meant to protect people on a very local basis. And from that standpoint, I think it has still a meaning today. It's to protect our local rights, our individual rights.
The First Amendment is freedom of speech. The Second Amendment is right to bear arms. In my opinion, there would not be a First Amendment if we did not have the Second Amendment. That's where I stand, and that's exactly the way it should be.
My understanding of the Second Amendment is that it had to do with forming a militia and having people at the ready to form a militia, which is generally not what we're talking about when we're talking about gun ownership today.
With the longer-term development of our society, it has been misconstrued for necessity. We have a standing army, we have a navy, we have a Marine Corps, and it is no longer necessary for our freedom for everybody to be carrying a gun.
To say we become a great nation and we have large armed forces, et cetera, doesn't necessarily supplant that requirement. And when a government becomes tyrannical and if people need to redress, that's one way they have to do it, is threat of arms.
We the people must have the right to bear arms to protect our family and our homes and our properties.
Personally, I like the Second Amendment, and I know it says it has to do with a militia, but so far the Supreme Court has upheld the rights of individuals to own and carry firearms. And in my opinion, it's a good idea. I think the more armed the populace is, the less we have to fear from our own government.
Well, the Second Amendment, you almost have to take it in the context and when it was written. And there was a great fight between states' rights and a strong national government. The right for a militia is really the way I see it. It was a way for smaller groups to not be dictated to by the large group, either an outside force or the federal government itself. At the time it was written, I don't believe that the amendment as such was really safeguarding the right of every citizen to carry a gun, but the right of small groups to stand up for themselves, in particular state-level governments, to form militias and not be dominated by larger forces.
I believe the Second Amendment was put there for us in order to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. I think the people's right to bear arms is more than just a well-established militia. It does say the people.
I think that we all have a right to bear arms. It is given to us with the Constitution because the Founding Fathers knew that if the government got to be like England had persecuted them, that they could not defend themselves unless they had arms. And I believe that is the reason for arms, is to defend yourself in case the government would want to come and take your gold, take your family, incarcerate you. So we need to have legalized guns.
Seems like back in my younger days, 50 years ago or whatever, or longer, why people might have a pistol in the house. They might have a .22 rifle or possibly a hunting rifle for protection. And now, why I see all of these highly automatic weapons, Uzis, submachine guns, and everything. And I don't think they should be allowed to be sold to individuals at all. They ought to be kept in the military, the National Guard, and such as that.
And I think that in the context of today's United States of America, it means a different thing than it meant back when we were a frontier country, just beginning to expand into what was for the Europeans a completely unknown world.
I think the Second Amendment has to be viewed in a historical context, coming out of the Revolutionary War, where we had basically an armed militia, and I believe that was the intent of the Founding Fathers, was that it was related to a militia. We've obviously gone a long way from that now, where we have an increasingly armed society.
Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, going again, I think everybody should have one. If everybody has one, then it makes it all, it's better than half the people having one and half of them not. I think everybody should have one.
The Second Amendment preserves the right of American citizens to keep and bear arms. I think that the current controversy over the Second Amendment is a puzzle. The Founding Fathers of the country, I think, had it right, and for a couple of reasons, but probably foremost would be for the right of Americans to protect their family and loved ones and possessions against intruders in their homes, and also to prevent an overbearing federal government from taking away our liberties.
My main issue is with the ability of an individual to walk into a gun store, buy a gun that has the capacity or the capability of firing 30 rounds in 20 seconds or whatever. And the fact we don't put any restriction on this. We don't need that kind of weapon to go hunting. You don't even need that, I would say, just for the day in, day out protection of your family. It's stupid.
No one wants the government to intrude on their perceived rights, but surely there's got to be some form of control. I mean, if people can just go in without a check and feel that they've got the right to get any weapon and go out and even lend it to their mothers or their children or their aunts or their nephews and sons to go out. I mean, look at all of the damage that's being done. How many people have we got to carry on killing in this country before we come to our senses?
There should be limits, I think, like on assault rifles and stuff, because I don't think people should be carrying that stuff around, honestly. Like maybe shotguns, rifles, pistols, hunting stuff, that's fine with me. But assault rifles and stuff like that, I don't think we should be normal people, like non-army people shouldn't be carrying it around. So.
A large faction of our populace now believes that amendment gives them the right to possess any and all weapons that are available. I disagree. I don't think the average citizen needs all the assault weapons that they think they do, and I'd be surprised if we ever do have that need. And but if the need arose, then I would probably be open to changing my mind, and I'd probably help pass those weapons out. But at this point, I don't believe that's the intent, nor should be the practice.
I think everybody should have the right to bear arms, and gun control is a necessary item, especially for the heavy equipment guns, like the grenade launchers and things like that. Those need to be in the hands of the military. Those don't need to be in the hands of a John Doe. I think that's what it needs to be.
As being a police officer for 24 years, I have no doubt, and I feel very strongly that there does need to be some gun control. I own several guns myself, but there's just some weapons out there that people just don't need to have.
The only restriction that I can think of that they should have is that it can't remain unloaded.
Should we be allowed to have bigger and bigger weapons, more powerful, more lethal weapons? What about assault rifles? Do we really need them? What about the size of a magazine? Do we really need 100 clips in a magazine? Could we have assault rifles? Could we have rocket launchers? Where the hell does it end?
Now I think it's out of hand. We have AK-47s, definitely not used for hunting, and not meant to be used for hunting, but for killing, not for defense. We have guns that have a lot of killing power, and in society today they're causing harm, and it doesn't promote domestic tranquility.
I'm a proponent of gun control regulations for many reasons because of things that have happened in this country, but I believe that background checks, that's a no-brainer to me. I don't understand why that's such a big issue.
From the standpoint of working as an appellate judge, is that when people carry guns, have them readily accessible, they get into situations where they use them and people end up hurt or killed that would not otherwise happen but for the fact that they have a readily available gun. Not too often in my experience. In fact, I can't think of one instance where anyone stopped a crime with a gun that they were carrying. They usually end up committing a crime.
As far as controlling individuals that carry guns, I notice even in our own state now we passed a law that people can carry. That doesn't bother me too much. I think essentially the responsible people are still going to be responsible. I don't think they're going to fly off the handle. People aren't going to carry guns who wouldn't carry guns otherwise. And in a situation where they do go into a threatening situation, I think having the gun builds their confidence and gives them protection.
I can't think of any reasonable reason why an individual needs a rocket launcher or a automatic weapon. You're not going to use it for hunting, so it seems absurd to me.
Anything less than ICBM is fine.
Right? Does a person have a right to own a cannon? Well, I don't think even the head of the NRA would take that position. At least I don't think so.
In terms of having the guns today, I think what we need to do is balance out individual rights to have guns for particular things and public safety. And ultimately, I think public safety is the most important piece.
If we're really and truly interested in having a dialogue, and I think most Americans are, on gun violence and mass shootings in schools in particular, we need to have a national dialogue. And I think there are at least four concrete steps that we ought to take. Eliminating outlying bump stocks and large ammunition clips, Automatic weapons have no place in our society. And then background checks. I mean, even Wayne LaPierre years ago defended the concept of background checks. So that ought to be strengthened.
So somewhere along the way, this country is going to have to decide, what weapons do we want in the hands of just the normal citizens of this country? You want a bazooka in their hands? You want hand grenades that people can throw into shopping center malls? What kind of weapons do you really want to allow the public to have? Well, obviously, an AK-47 is a weapon of war, not a weapon of self-protection. It's insane that we've allowed this to happen to this country, and the carnage from this policy is becoming more severe each and every year and each and every day. It has to stop.
During the McCarthy era, we had congressional hearings that focused on McCarthyism. I think we ought to have hearings in Congress where both sides can come before Congress and committees and have the entire nation listen to both sides of the argument and decide precisely what are the rights of our citizens under the Second Amendment and what ought to we be doing statutorily and in other ways about gun violence in our society.
The guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand?
The NRA is probably one of the most corrupt organizations in America.
One, they send thoughts and prayers, but claim it's not the time to discuss gun reform legislation. Well, I'm sorry. Thoughts and prayers don't save lives. Every day, 100 Americans are killed with guns, and hundreds more are shot and injured. If we don't talk about gun violence in the wake of a mass shooting, when are we going to discuss it? Number two, they downplay the role of white nationalism. After the El Paso shooting, in which the shooter wrote a racist manifesto before carrying out the attack, Trump and Republicans in Congress tried to minimize the real danger caused by white supremacist groups. The fact is, white supremacist violence is on the rise. Extremist-related murders jumped 35% from 2017 to 2018, according to the Anti-Defamation League. In 2018, all of these extremist-related murders were carried out by right-wing radicals. Number three, they blame video games for causing violence. Wrong. In 2011, even the U.S. Supreme Court recognized that research did not find a clear connection between violent video games and aggressive behavior. And if you look at Korea and Japan, whose citizens spend more per capita on video games than the United States, but have strict gun laws, you'll see they have some of the lowest rates of violent crime in the world. Number four, they blame mental illness. Wrong. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, of the 120,000 gun-related killings in the United States between 2001 and 2010, fewer than 5% were committed by people diagnosed with mental illness. In fact, those with a mental illness are much more likely to be a victim of crime rather than a perpetrator of one. Number five, they claim gun laws won't stop the violence. Wrong again. After the assault weapons ban became law, gun massacres, defined as instances of gun violence in which 6 or more people are shot and killed, fell by 37%. When George W. Bush let it expire, gun massacres more than doubled. Studies have also found that where gun laws are weaker, like in the United States, there are more mass shootings. Number six, they say more guns are necessary to stop the violence. No. In fact, the opposite is true. More guns lead to more crime. Right-to-carry handgun laws have been shown to increase violent crime by 13% to 15% a decade after they're enacted. It's time to stop gun violence in America. It's time to break the NRA's stranglehold on our democracy.
Well, there's no question that we have a bunch of cowards that obviously are legislators and Congress people and nationally elected officials when it comes to guns. They're afraid. They're cowards. They're afraid of the NRA. And the NRA can beat you. It has beaten hundreds and hundreds of people running for public office. That's how powerful they are.
The NRA should be ashamed of what they have done, particularly to the students of America, the people in schools. They did not make a deal with the NRA. They didn't make a deal with them to go to school and wear a flak jacket and get a helmet, and teachers went to school to get the ability to go to college, to have the ability to teach students. They didn't go there to become an armed camp. It is absurd, and we as adults in this country and legislatures have let them down. We have not done our job, and the NRA owns so many politicians. Make no mistake about it, they own them.
And they don't realize, the people that obviously support the NRA, that this is not about gun ownership. It's about gun manufacturing. It's about the manufacturers of guns that control the NRA, and the NRA obviously is a mouthpiece for these manufacturers. It's about money.
Our Constitution never meant for this to be the way it is in America. They have taken gun rights people and construed the Second Amendment to their benefit, and so has the NRA. And make no mistake about it, you can fight the NRA. This is how you fight them. You fight them in their pocketbook. If you have a NRA membership, cancel it. If you see who still gets discounts from the NRA, don't shop with them. Don't fly on their airlines. Don't go to their stores. Because, let me assure you, it is all about money.
Well, unfortunately, the real world of politics in our country involves vote getting. I went to Congress in Washington, D.C. as a lobbyist for healthcare issues several years ago. And I was impressed by two things. One, I was impressed by how easy it was for an ordinary citizen to walk off the street and talk to their representatives. I thought that was fantastic. The second thing I was impressed about is how little my representatives knew about the issues.
The lobbyists should be outlawed. The reason for it, because they have the power and the money and the influence on our political politicians that are supposed to be public servants and serve us. And it comes out, things that we are against, they get through because of the lobbyists, so let's outlaw them.
Lobbyists are the vehicle by which money controls our government. Money controls everything in our society to a much greater extent than it should, and lobbyists are the tool by which money gets to government, and I hate it.
Shoot them. Shoot them again. And shoot them again. What else can I say?
Wet pain. I never heard of that expression before. This is a first on me.
Well, that's a tough one. I don't know what that means. Maybe it's when you're walking in a huge rainstorm and you slip on the sidewalk and hurt yourself.
Bad sex.
Didn't know there was any such thing as wet pain. Now, I've heard of dry pain, but never wet pain.
I don't want to have wet pain. I could do without that.
Wet pain. The term ice water is coming to mind. I have no idea.
Wet pain. Wet pain. Oh, after it rains, you look out the window, it's a wet pain.
Wet pain? I've no idea at all. I think maybe it's an effort to seek out different people's views on situations that are irreconcilable.
Wet pain? I haven't got a clue.
Shoot them. Shoot them again. And shoot them again.
Ready, set, go, man, go. I got a gal that I love, so I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready. Ready, 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 I'm ready, ready, ready to rock and roll on the flat top, catching now the dungaree doll. I'm headed for the gym to the sock hop ball.